Well, especially if you're a college student, right?
What's that?
Especially if you're a college student.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you been tested at all before? Have you gone through the coronavirus test?
What was that, Sharon?
Have you had to go through the coronavirus test yet?
Well, I mean, we've had at work, we've had a couple of people that tested positive for it and were out.
But did you have to be tested?
Well, I'm going to get tested.
It's really not as bad as they.
Yeah, I was tested before some surgical thing earlier.
Oh, okay.
And swab down your throat or up your nose.
Up your nose, down your throat, up your
But
nose,
I don't
down
think
your throat.
I don't think they do that anymore. They do something else now, I think.
Well,
But
I just went to Maine at the end of September. And Maine requires you, they only had 5,500 cases, the entire state at that point. But they required you to have a negative test before you could go. And
Yeah.
I'm a pretty big sissy when it comes to that stuff, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I feel sick, but I don't, you know.
Well, in this time of year, there's so much that goes on.
Yeah, I know. Just with regular colds and stuff. So.
Yeah. Hopefully that's all it is.
Yep. And by the way, Sharon, we're going to tape this and it'll be on available for you to use.
Oh, good, thanks.
So you'll have it, and we'll post it on YouTube for underscore, and we'll post it on LinkedIn.
How's it been adjusted to doing it all remotely?
What was that?
How's it been with you having to adjust to doing everything remotely?
Well, it's I prefer to do it face to face.
I'm with you.
because I think we lose a lot. But, you know, I'm also teaching a couple classes, one at Eastern Gateway, one at Westminster, and I'm doing those online. So I don't think the students get everything out of it that they should, but I guess that's our job to try to figure out how we do
Yeah.
that. I don't know that these students even like it, really.
I don't think they do either. It's hard. It's part of the whole college experience is the interaction and the social aspect of, growing up together and going through life things that you didn't have to go through at home,
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
so.
Georgianne, how many do we have signed on? Anybody else sign on? Maybe Georgianne's not listening.
I'm here. We have 8 participants,
Okay.
and
Let's give
I
it
have the names here.
yeah,
Oh, Chris Greenwald, she's been at some of our programs. I see Kurt Flegel, Ralph Zerbonia.
yeah, I know Ralph.
Yeah. Since we didn't do a regular registration, the link was just on the flyer and on the Facebook page. So.
Yep.
I'm gonna mute my dogs here.
We'll wait till about 6:01, Sharon.
No rush. I'm good. I'm just proofing editorial pages.
Okay.
I like your background, Ralph.
Thanks.
That's great.
All right. Well, it's 6:01, so let's get started. If you're ready, turn on. Let's get moving.
Yep, it's recording. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So, hey, everybody, thank you for dialing in tonight. One of the things that we have our good friend Sharon Sorg here, and Sharon is the regional publisher of a number of the local newspapers and does a great job on keeping those papers going and keeping them vital within the community. We've had a number of instances over the past few years where we lost a number of newspapers. And so the newspaper business has to be sitting down right now saying, hey, how do we make it more viable for more folks? And what do we do to keep the papers going and keep them a viable part of social media? So I called this, the local newspaper, the other social media. And what I mean by that is I think there's some very interesting work that the local paper does that can't be done on a social media basis. And Sharon will get into some of that, but I want to share a little story of mine that made what makes me so interested in this. When I was just a youngster, and I apologize for having a cold here, so forgive me. But when I was just a youngster, I had my aunt in Detroit who grew up in Western Pennsylvania. She was a Newcastle girl, and she moved to Detroit. And her husband used to save the sports sections of the Free Press and the news for me and send it on down to me. Then it got to the point where I said, listen, let's just not save the sports section. Why don't you save me the whole paper and send it down? Well, that became a rather expensive ordeal to send copies of the paper down, but it got me interested in Michigan politics. It got me interested in keeping stats on the baseball team because I would keep the scores, I would cut them out, put them in a scrapbook. And it got me focused on batting averages and baseball statistics and all those things that are really cool today that you can just go to your computer and find out instantly what everybody's hitting, what everybody's batting. So it helped me figure out ERAs, it helped me figure out batting averages. And so today when we're sitting in a meeting and someone wants to know what 3/8 is and I tell them it's 0.375, that all came from that childhood of reading the newspaper. And so I think it's pretty interesting as we go back, and that story is probably really relevant to guys like me who have read the paper for years. There's nothing like getting up on vacation or a nice Saturday afternoon and going to the mailbox and getting the newspaper out of the mailbox. Now you may complain that it smells bad because of the newsprint, but you get the newspaper out, and you know, it used to be we'd get it out Sunday morning and everybody'd be sitting at the breakfast table and my brother would say, give me the sports section. And my sister would say, give me the society section. And we'd all split it up and take a look at it. It became a family event. No different than social media is today. A little bit different, but a lot alike. So, you know, it got me wondering as we started to build our relationship with the Newcastle News and the other newspapers that CNHI own, how are they looking at this phenomenon? And what are they doing to make it better for all of us as they continue to be maybe the other social media that we don't really think of? So Sharon, I'd just like to kind of kick it off with you, and it's going to be a discussion. I've got a number of questions for you here, but you know, tell us a little bit about the local papers and why it's important to keep them alive, and introduce yourself and what you do for CNHI.
Thanks, Ron. So I am the regional publisher over 5 publications all within our area. I have the Newcastle News, the Herald in Sharon, Pennsylvania, the Meadville Tribune in Meadville, Pennsylvania, as well as the Star Beacon in Ashtabula, Ohio. So honestly, our mission currently is to save newspapers. And our motto is that a city without a newspaper is a city without a soul. And that is our purpose for being there. In prior days, it was really important that we also shared a large amount of national news. But our key to success and our key to making ourselves integral in our communities at this point is to be as ultra local as we possibly can. And that's our focus these days. Whether it's sports, whether it's schools, whether it's the community taxes. We've done a lot of things differently, not just delivering a print product anymore. We also have the e-edition, which is an exact replica as if you're flipping the page electronically. We also have updates every moment that things are happening on our websites, which we weren't previously able to do when we only printed a paper. And we also Facebook live stream a lot of information from city council meetings and organizations such as that, where citizens may not feel comfortable going into that arena, but they are really starving for the information that's happening there.
So Sharon, tell us a little bit more about the e-edition, because not all of us might be aware of that.
So the e-edition is a PDF replica of the newspaper. So literally, it looks just like the newspaper. It opens like the newspaper. It just doesn't feel like the newspaper and smell like the newspaper. You see everything exactly the same way as if it was delivered to your front door. If you are a subscriber of any one of our publications, it is a part of your subscription. So if you haven't activated that, you should. I always joke that it's never late and it's never wet. It's always where it's supposed to be. So on days when there's snow and we're delayed a bit with deliveries, Your newspaper is usually there by 5 a.m. on that computer.
Huh. Well, that's interesting because I think that actually, newsprint is getting pretty expensive, isn't it?
Actually, it was, but now it's on the other side of that, and the pandemic has caused some of that. It's not that it's not expensive, it's still expensive, but the prices has tapered off a bit since the tariff time, because a lot of newspapers have found themselves in predicaments where they're either non-existent or they've reduced things, so the consumption has changed.
So if you could describe your mission in just a few words, what is the paper's mission today?
I could say it in 2 words: save
Okay.
newspapers.
Okay. And you have an altruistic, is that for what particular reason?
Sorry, I didn't hear what she said.
Oh, sorry, Ralph. Save newspapers. Our mission is to save newspapers. And I
Okay.
think that the mission is that, much like, and we'll refer to the Vindicator, a lot of people took that information for granted every day until it wasn't there. And I think people don't realize how much crucial information flows through our pages. And in order to keep informed citizens and watchdogs on local government, we really have to be an integral part of that every day.
Hey, Ron, I'm sorry. I accidentally hit to mute you. That was a miss. I'm sorry. Ron, unmute yourself.
There we go.
There you are.
You actually wanted to shut me up, Patrick?
Never.
Actually, that's the easiest I saw anyone be able to do that.
Yeah, a lot of people would love to do that.
If it were only just a button for me, right?
Exactly. Georgianne would probably be one of them. But anyway, yeah. So with the popularity of social media, what do you see as the role of your local newspaper, and what is it evolving to? Can you take us back maybe 15 years and tell us how it's changed and how it's evolved and what you had to do in order to keep it current?
Absolutely. So, prior to social media and prior to the technology that we currently have, nothing used to irritate me more as a newspaper person than things that always happened right after we printed, because we had no avenue to share any of that news with the community until the next day's newspaper. So by then, either people had construed what happened or maybe heard it on the TV news and thought the newspaper was always running behind. Technology has allowed us to be competitive in all of those ways. So while we break things in complete depth in our newspapers, we also break the news immediately on our website pages, as well as our Facebook pages and our Twitter pages. It has allowed us to make sure that some of the information that's being shared on social media is credible and verified, which is crucial. Sometimes people think because somebody said it on Facebook, it must be true. So we watch that and we try to play a role in that and make sure that people are doing things the right way there. It is very difficult sometimes. There are ethics that we follow that not everyone on social media believes they should follow. For instance, we would never identify a victim of a crime. We would never identify an accident without waiting for families to be notified. And people on social media these days bust out a camera and put it on Facebook without a care in the world. That's a little bit irritating for everyone.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I notice in particular in this political season is there are things that are released that maybe aren't totally verified that are out there in the world, and people are thinking they're correct, and they may be, they may not be. I mean, the role of the press has always been to verify some of those stories before they actually publish them. Have you run into any of that from a political standpoint locally?
We have, and not just politically. We've run into a lot of people questioning our role because people break things before we do. But we are very, very stringent with that, and we're very clear that we want to write, not first necessarily. We want to make sure that we are really aware of what the impact of what we're sharing has, because the people on Facebook don't seem to think about the consequences of what they post. So we're very careful with that, but nothing that we post is not verified first. And it's really interesting to watch. You'll watch some social media, somebody breaks that they think they saw something, and you'll watch the whole thread play out. And then eventually somebody will say, well, what does the newspaper say? Because they know that we would verify it before it was printed.
Yeah, how do you position the paper to, is that one of your principles? Is that that you follow? Is that, because obviously you've got New York Post, New York Times, anybody's just Washington Post. You're just trying to get stuff out there before the next paper.
Right. And it is
it
one of our,
it gives you a political advantage or whatever.
It-
How do you make sure you take the political nature out of it?
we are very, very careful with that. And this is how I tell my staff that we're doing our job right. When people from both parties are equally complaining about what we do. Honestly, our job is to educate and inform and not tell people what to do, which way to feel or vote. So we're very careful with all of that. We're also very careful that our newsrooms are aware that nothing goes out until it's absolutely accurate. Because the only place in our newspapers that you will ever see our opinion is on our opinion page. And it's clearly marked, though people still get confused. But we don't intercept or intermingle our opinion in news stories at all, political or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I have a question for you. I saw a post of a writer for your papers from the Sharon Herald that got pushed in a picket line incident.
Yes.
And the article he wrote for that, do you want to comment on that a little bit? Because I think that's pretty unique.
Yeah, so in today's world, with the current climate, many people use the terms fake news and all of that. And it's actually used as an excuse sometimes, and it's also used as just a way to excuse us from looking further or doing our jobs. So I had a reporter go down to a union picket line on a Sunday morning, and this reporter in particular took photos Sunday morning. He then covered a biking event and then didn't like the photos that he took Sunday morning and wanted to amply represent the union. So he went back to take additional photos of higher quality. When he went back, he approached some picketers who didn't want their faces in the photo. We were good with that. So they were okay to hold their signs in front of their faces, etc. At which point, when he backed up to take the photo, he was pushed down in the street and basically mocked. Immediately on Monday morning, we broke the story and just said knew about the strike, and also that one of our reporters had their hands put on them. When that story broke on Monday morning on Facebook, some individuals took it upon themselves to put on Facebook that my reporter was drunk and fell into the street. And they also wrote that on their top of their print newspaper and then continued to share it everywhere. Obviously that wasn't the case. It took us a day or so. We obtained the security footage from the location where he was pushed, and we put the video out, not just to prove that we were in fact just doing our jobs, but to prove that everything that people read on social media is not the case. And there were people that were actually still supporting that we made it up. It's insane.
So you as the regional publisher, what consternation, what went through your mind in dealing with something like that? Because that's a very unusual case, and I think it's remarkable the stand you guys took on it.
Well, thank you. So the first thing we do obviously is reach out to the powers of the other party to hopefully make them understand where we're coming from and that, we were doing our jobs. And basically my reporter was standing in a public street. He was not on their private sidewalk. He was not in their face. He was not any of those things. Then we decide, obviously I had the reporter involved because, at first we hadn't seen the video and I didn't want to put that video out there if it was going to make him uncomfortable in any way. But he is a large union supporter. He grew up in a union home with a dad that wasn't work for the railroad. And so putting it out there really took a stance that we're not going to just be labeled. We're not going to just take what people hand to us and not defend ourselves. And I think that the press has found themselves in a position where we didn't used to do that, but now we really truly need to.
Well, I think it's a testament to the paper's character as well as you as the editor or publisher of the paper that you did what was in your mind right, the right approach to that, and the most fair approach. Because everybody's been through those things, and we realize that emotions get a hold of people wherever you're at. And if you can look at it rationally, you can look at it kind of fairly safely, and I think that's what you did. So that was good. I just happened to run across that today.
May I ask, when you were talking about the social media and the use of it, how do you afford staffing that? Is that additional staffing to you? Is that additional duties to staff reporters? How do you staff social media?
So we have a number of ways that we do it. We have cross-trained all of our staff, and everyone has different levels of what they can and can't do on our social media platforms, so that no matter, because news has no schedule, as you know, so you can't plan on somebody just manning it during business hours. We also have systems in our newsroom that when we put a story into that system, it will allow us to distribute that story on Twitter as well as Facebook, like as an automatic process. So we can do that as well. All of our reporters are now trained to take video because the world reads in different fashions now, and they digest information in different tidbits than they used to. So we're very aware of that. And our reporters, it used to be back in the day that the reporter wrote the story and that was it. The photographer took the pictures and all that worked out the way it did, but now everyone does a bit of everything.
Okay.
So Sharon, do you actually want to have your video shut off?
No, I didn't shut it off, so I'm not sure how it shut off.
Okay. Patrick, do you have any idea how Sharon got blacked out? And maybe it's just my laptop. I don't know.
No, it's mine too, which I'm okay with. But I didn't do it. If I did, I didn't do it intentionally.
Okay. All right. Patrick, if you can kind of check that out, let us know. Local news is a big thing. And, you mentioned before, you talk about the council meetings, you talk about things that are happening in your city that are lost pretty much in social media unless someone wants to give an opinion of one way or another. There's no real fair assessment or fair representation of what's going on. So do you still, is it your idea that still staff local newsrooms and maybe use social media to get that message out through social media?
Yeah, and we do both. So at some point, the Newcastle Council meeting that we Facebook Live has over 800 views. And these are, I don't know if any of you have ever gone to a council meeting, but I can tell you in the 30 years I've been in the newspaper business, there's never been that many people in a room. So I think what we've tried to do is just deliver the news in a variety of ways so that the people that want to digest it can digest it in their fashion at their speed.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that, that's some of the things that you kind of miss as to who's paying attention to who's minding the story in Newcastle or Elwood or wherever you might be that your newspaper covers.
Right. Right. And it in this political season, there's been a lot going on as well. So there's a lot to keep up with. And if the press doesn't play that role, that becomes oblivious to the community, and we don't ever want to see that happen.
Yeah. So how do you, Sharon, how do you, when we used to get the paper on Thanksgiving Day or the day after Thanksgiving, it was like 75 pages of ads and flyers and all that stuff. That was the big day to kick off Black Friday, which obviously was a lot of revenue for you guys. But now that's changed and there's other medias to go after. What has that advertising revenue done to your income? Because, you look at, there was a Strauss store in Newcastle at one time, so I'm sure that there were ads run continuously for them. There were, Giant Eagle probably ran big ads, whatever. And that's changed. So what do you do to recapture that revenue?
So that has changed in a variety of ways over the years, and mainly for the major retailers as well. As the major retailers have closed brick and mortar stores and gone online and done digital things, their marketing changes. When their marketing changes, we make sure that we have the avenues to be able to give them what they need on the other side. So for instance, we do sell print advertising alone if somebody wants that, but normally what we do is we sell a total audience. And that total audience includes our websites. We do targeted marketing through special tactics that can allow people to geofence customers and pinpoint their message to exactly who they would like to go to through social media and etc. So while the pages in print may have changed, the ways that we can garnish revenue has definitely expanded over the years as well.
Yeah, because, just think about that. I mean, the newspapers used to be chock full of advertisements. And I picked up a Vindicator a couple of years ago, and I got it. It was maybe 7 pages altogether, and I thought, man, this has really changed over the years. I mean, significant.
And I always tell people when we have a story about a business, and people look at that business and they only think about the customers that went there, that it affects every single business that has made changes over the years has affected the newspaper business. The Macy's, the Kmart's, the Sears. All of those, every single thing that happens affects us in some fashion. So we prepare ourselves in advance to make sure that mom and pops are represented well because they're an important part of the community.
No, I understand, because the retail segment has changed so dramatically over the past 10 years. And you look at the advertising that's done and the online sales that these companies attract and what they do. I mean, it's shifted everything really well. And I don't know that the newspaper industry was maybe caught a little blindsided by that.
Yeah, I think the newspaper industry was a little big for their britches for a while. I think they've figured it out recently.
So Sharon, editorial comments. So I think the big value in the newspapers back in the probably 40s and 50s was the editorial comment, the endorsement of candidates, the thought leadership in the community. And that's shifted somewhat, but is editorials a big thing for you? Do you think that's really where you can add some value? And
so especially in Newcastle, I think we hadn't done our part for a long time, being a strong editorial page. However, we just recently added a new editor, Jeff Garrett, who actually is a Pulitzer Prize winner for editorials. Okay. So he is making some serious changes there. He has balanced out some columnists. He has invited the public to participate. We are writing local editorials on a regular basis, which will only increase. But the world that we live in, back in the day, people were really interested in being informed and I don't want to say guided, but these days people don't want to be told what to do, quite frankly. And so when we do use our voice locally, we want to make sure that we use it to make a difference. And if we feel like endorsing a candidate for, let's just talk about the president race, would make a difference, then we would go there. But nothing we say at that point is going to change someone's mind about where they stand, especially in this election. So right. That isn't something that we will do, but we will make sure that our voice is out there to help on other levels where we can make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, local initiatives, like, um, school levies, those type of things, those are
Absolutely. And
something.
sporting events when the virus hit and all of those things we've covered. And
Yeah.
we continue to.
Now, is there any thought on putting the thought leader of editorial on? Will that be on the what do we want to call it? The online version as well?
It is. Everything is in the e-edition, but it is also now, due to our new editor, everything is being posted online.
Okay.
And we make it very clear when we post it that it's an opinion, because people get confused that, news articles and opinion page, and when they're not flipping the pages, they have no idea where it really showed up. So we're very clear with that, but we are sharing everything there now.
Right. What are the demographics of your customers today?
So ironically, we reach all the way from school age to until people leave the earth. Most people look at newspapers and say, well, your demographics have to be really slanted towards the higher age. Our highest demographic is absolutely the 55 to 64-year-old. But the second highest is 25 to 34 years old.
Now, what do you attribute that to?
I think it's the mix of how we now deliver the news. And I also think that, we use the newspaper in the schools to help with resources, but also to train people where they can go for the information that they need. And I guess train is probably not the right word to use, but so they become users all the way through. And when they get to that age, everyone has one of those mobile phones in their hand. We do breaking news alerts. We do a lot of things that pop up right on their phones, and it allows them to access small works of information that they can consume quickly without having to sit down with an entire newspaper.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that, but that's an interesting comment.
Yeah, and then the third actually is 35 to 44-year-olds.
Huh. And what do you attribute that to?
I think the same, that they start at an earlier age and they just continue to consume what we have basically throughout, which is good for all of us.
Huh. Well, that's what I was going to ask you is, how do you compete for a younger market? But it sounds like you're doing it anyway.
And actually, between our website and our e-editions and all of social media, we touch 88% of the Newcastle news, the Lawrence County area, in one fashion or another on every day.
Okay. How has publication numbers, are they down over the past, obviously down over the past 15, 20 years, but have you seen a stabilization of those numbers, and are they stabilized somewhat?
They have, and we've definitely reached that. And also, and we discussed this a little before going on, but the pandemic has really brought attention to people about how important the local news has become. Because just imagine when this whole virus hit, if you're quarantined in your house and the only information that you had at your access was what was coming out of the Capitol and what was coming out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you have a specific strategy to compete with social media for readership?
We actually don't look at social media as competition, so to speak, because really the news that is
You are
delivered,
social media to a certain extent, so it's
yeah, right. And the news there, if it's not credible, it's not really news to us, although you've all seen that they are recently finding themselves in situations where they are going to need to verify some things before it's posted and take down posts. I think they just they've created confusion as to what is news and what isn't. And some people can't digest the difference, and that's important to us.
Yeah. Now, do all the papers that you run, which is quite a few, do they have the same type strategy, and is there an online version, and do they operate the same way, or are you gradually taking this out too?
No, we all have that. So we all have access to that, and most CNHI LLC newspapers do. Maybe the smaller weeklies wouldn't, but they have websites. They might not have the e-edition part, but they definitely have websites and Facebook pages and Twitter feeds
Okay.
and all of that.
Sharon, what will the paper look like in the future? Can you sit down and say, hey, here's what it looks like today, and here's what it'll evolve into? Is there anything safely to say that this will evolve into this or that?
I think that, you know, back in the day, we could do longer term planning as to what we expected to happen. But in today's world, things change so quickly. What we have seen is people want to participate more, and we've opened our pages for that. We've also seen that people obviously aren't as inclined to read the longer, detailed stories that we used to deliver. I think what we've done a great job of is, instead of trying to figure out what the public needs, asking the public what they want. And I think that's a crucial part of our success moving forward, is to continue to engage the consumers that are digesting our information, and that will lead ultimately to the product that they want delivered to them.
Yeah, I think Sharon, the reason I was looking forward to this call is because I think, out of most of the people that I've known out of the newspaper business, you are part visionary and part operational expert. And so, you have a unique combination of skills that allow you to operate the paper and know how to pay the bills and how to get things done and what you need to do. But you also have this part of you that looks out over what could be and what is going to have to be, and start to lay the groundwork for what you need to do in the future to survive.
Thank you.
So I think that's pretty unique.
I've been privileged to be put in places for newspapers that have run long over 100 years, and under my watch, they will continue to run as I take that responsibility seriously.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty unique position to be in. So that obviously answers my last question about how do you survive and prosper, and what's the strategy to do that. I think everything you're doing in the paper space is positioning towards that survival and towards that prosperity. So, I mean, is there anything else you want to add about, your vision and where these papers will be in the future?
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
I think we've covered a lot.
Well, I think you've done a lot so far.
Thank you.
May I ask one other question?
You can ask as many as you'd like.
Ask as many as you want.
What are you most proud of?
I am most proud of the people that work beside me every day to do what they do. No one is in the journalism field to make $1 million. It interrupts your life on a daily basis in hours that you can't even anticipate. It comes with the responsibility of in the current climate, defending a lot of things that we do. And I just think that there are phenomenal people that go out and above and beyond to serve their communities.
Yeah, I wish it were easier, but it's not. I know that.
We say all the time, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah, exactly. So what other questions do we have? I'd like to turn it back to the audience. And anybody have anything that they'd like to ask Sharon? They've got a beautiful office downtown Newcastle that is absolutely gorgeous. One of the things was I wanted to have the meeting down there just so they could show off.
And we will do that. When this all settles down, we will definitely do that. Our lobby is marble, and it is hand painted with the history of printing around the edge of it. We actually have a museum room upstairs with newspapers that were actually printed the day after the Titanic sank.
Wow.
So there's a lot of history there, and that's where I go to remind myself on the days that you wonder why you do what you do. That's where I go.
Yeah. How many people work at the papers today?
So it just depends on the size of the newspaper and the staffing that we have based on carriers versus contractors, but anywhere from 35 to 70
Which is the largest of the ones you own in the region?
The Sharon newspaper.
Okay, okay. And yeah, they've got a great reputation for news reporting over the years. So
I have a question too.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Before the dogs start barking again.
Okay.
Are all of the papers run out of the same office?
No, I actually rotate to all of those newspapers.
Okay,
I
so you
am the
have to
moving
travel.
link.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, this morning, this week, so I used to, believe it or not, prior to the pandemic, I used to spend a day in every office and then on Friday revisit one of the offices. During the pandemic, I stayed put for a bit just to not put everybody at risk if I were to get sick.
Right.
So currently what I do is I spend a week at a time at each office. This week is actually my week in Meadville. However, I drove to Sharon this afternoon to do this here just because it's closer to home at the end of the night. I live in Pulaski.
Okay.
We won't hold that against you.
Well, it's like a 911 nightmare, so it's kind of crazy. It's Mercer County, but it's Pulaski.
Yeah. I know when you said, when we introduced you the last time, you wrote Pulaski on the note and the guy had to look and say, what's the name of this place?
Yeah, remember? He didn't even know where Pulaski was. So
That's
my
right.
car is literally 2 years old and it has over 75,000 miles on it already.
Yeah,
That's how much I travel.
yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? I mean, anybody before we sign off? No? Sharon, I want to thank you tonight for your openness and discussing this. I think the newspaper business is, having lived in Youngstown and lost the Vindicator, it's hurtful a little bit, because it's like an old friend's gone.
Mhm.
And I think that, we have to protect those. And that's why I wanted to have this discussion with you to see how you guys were positioning to be successful in the future and what you were doing to make it happen. So I want to thank you for your openness and thank you for the ideas, because I think I agree with you. I think a combination of social media and traditional printing, and eventually maybe all social media, becomes the way it's presented in the future. Don't know. But it was very interesting for me to hear that you have over, the 22 to 35 group actually reading more of the paper, which is great news.
Well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to participate. And if there's ever any questions that any of you have, you don't have to wait for one of these. You can reach me at the newspaper at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I appreciate your time tonight. And hopefully it was enlightening to you and you have a better understanding of the viability of the local papers. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Sharon. Feel better.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Well, thank you very much.